For 30 years, Johnny Carson wasn't just the host of The Tonight Show, he was America's nightly companion. With his Midwestern charm, razor-sharp timing, and that playful golf swing, he made 5 nights a week feel like a visit with a trusted friend. Yet, for all his presence on television, the man himself remained a mystery. Johnny was famously private. He drew a sharp line between the on-air character Johnny Carson and the complex, thoughtful, often melancholy man who existed off-stage. As former producer Fred DeCordova once said, Johnny created a character named Johnny Carson and played him every night. The real Johnny chose very carefully who he let past that polished facade. That same selectivity extended to his guests. Across The Tonight Show's historic run, nearly 22,000 people sat across from him, but only a handful earned Johnny's genuine respect, admiration, and on rare occasions, his trust. These chosen few weren't just guests. They were Johnny's guests. With them, his posture softened, his laugh was real, and the light in his eyes told you this mattered to him. Let's revisit those final words. The private and public exchanges that reveal the real Johnny Carson, the man behind the desk. Bob Hope was an institution. With his machine gun joke delivery, his USO tours, and his place in American comedy, he was a pioneer Johnny grew up watching. On camera, Carson always treated him with the reverence owed to a trailblazer. But behind the curtain, things were more complicated. As Hope aged, he leaned heavily on cue cards and rehearsed material. Carson, who prided himself on spontaneity, found those segments stiff and difficult. Johnny respected Bob's legacy enormously, recalled one staff member, but privately, he thought Hope's style had grown outdated. Still, Carson never let those doubts show. On Hope's last Tonight Show appearance, Johnny walked backstage and told him, "Thanks for everything, Bob, you never missed ever." It was classic Carson, acknowledging Hope's unbroken professionalism, even if he longed for more improvisation. Dean Martin could make Carson crack like few others. With his glass in hand, his sly smile, and his famously happy, drunk stage persona, Dino brought a looseness Johnny clearly admired. Martin never treated the talk show format as sacred. He'd miss his chair on purpose, derail Johnny's questions, or wander into playful nonsense, and Carson loved it. On Martin's final visit, Johnny told him warmly, "Don't change. Dino, the world needs at least one guy who never takes it seriously." That summed up Carson's admiration. Dean embodied the carefree joy Johnny himself, bound to his desk each night, may have secretly envied. By the time George Burns was still appearing on The Tonight Show in his 90s, Carson saw him as living comedy royalty. Burns had started in vaudeville, bridging the world Johnny studied as a young comic to the television age. Unlike most guests, Johnny would prepare extensively for Burns, researching and crafting thoughtful questions. He approached George's visits more like a student than a host, said one writer. On air, Carson once told him, "George, you're the only guy I know who gets funnier every year." Backstage, he added that Burns made him believe age was just another punchline. For Johnny, always conscious of his own place in comedy's timeline, Burns was proof that the craft could evolve with you, not pass you by. When Lucille Ball sat across from Johnny, it felt less like an interview and more like two legends sharing space. Lucy had changed the sitcom forever. Johnny had redefined late night. Together, they were equals, and he treated her that way. After one of her last appearances, Carson told her privately, "You're the real deal, Lucy, always were." That was as pure an acknowledgement as Johnny ever gave. When Ball passed in 1989, Carson broke his own rule of emotional distance. He devoted part of The Tonight Show to a heartfelt tribute. He rarely revealed his feelings for celebrities on air. For Lucy, he made an exception. If one comic shaped Johnny Carson's style more than anyone, it was Jack Benny. Benny's legendary timing, his deliberate pauses, and his willingness to play the fool rather than the hero. All of that lived on in Johnny's approach. On his final visit, Carson told him, "You taught me how to listen." Those words weren't hyperbole. Carson often admitted Benny taught him that silence could be funnier than a punchline. With Jack, Johnny wasn't the host. He was the student in awe of the master. Few guests could pull Johnny out of his polished professionalism like Burt Reynolds. Their friendship was built on playful chaos, water fights, shaving cream ambushes, and banter that went completely off script. Carson loved it. "Burt gets the game," he once said. "Most guests don't." Reynolds understood that the best TV moments weren't rehearsed. They were real. During Burt's final appearance, Johnny laughed and said, "Don't ever stop coming back. Burt, I need someone to keep me honest." For a man who disliked losing control, Carson treasured the rare guest who could surprise him in the best way. Carol Burnett could make Johnny bend his own rules. When she came on, he let her run long, interact with the audience, even hijack parts of the show. He trusted her completely. She never disappointed. One producer recalled, he'd say before her segment, "Just let Carol do whatever she wants." Backstage after her last appearance, Carson told her, "If I could build a show around just one person, it would be you." With Carol, Johnny didn't just host. He collaborated and he adored every minute of it. Carson and Bob Newhart were kindred spirits. Both relied on understatement, perfect timing, and finding humor in the ordinary. Bob's the most effortlessly funny man I know, Johnny once said. That was the highest praise he could offer, because effortlessness was exactly what he strived for every night. Off camera, the two even played golf together, a rare invitation into Johnny's private life. After Newhart's last show appearance, Johnny told him quietly, "Nobody made it look easier, but I know how hard you worked." It was respect from one craftsman to another. Among thousands of interviews, one stands above all. In 1981, Jimmy Stewart visited The Tonight Show and read a simple poem about his beloved golden retriever, Bo, who had recently passed. As Stewart finished, Johnny's eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Thank you for sharing that, Jimmy." It was one of the only times Carson let his guard down on national television. Backstage, he embraced Stewart and said, "I'll never forget that. You just gave us something real." For a man known for restraint, that moment was extraordinary. Stewart had opened a door Johnny rarely allowed anyone to enter. These final exchanges reveal more than Johnny's favorite guests. They tell us what he valued most: craftsmanship, authenticity, warmth, and the courage to be real. He admired Benny's timing, Burnett's joy, Newhart's subtlety, and Stewart's vulnerability. He respected those who didn't take themselves too seriously, like Dean and Bert, and those who carried comedy's legacy with grace. Like Burns and Hope, for 30 years, he invited America into his living room, but kept his own heart carefully guarded. Yet, with these select few, he lowered the mask. And in those fleeting moments, whether through a laugh, a tear, or a quiet word, we glimpsed the real Johnny Carson.